Thanks, Rez. So let me get my screen shared here momentarily, and everybody should be able to see this. It's popping up for me on the share, so we should be good to go.
Yep.
So as Tim and Rez walk you through kind of what Tufin is, what we're doing, I'm going to actually show you what it looks like to drive Tufin and actually leverage it within your organization and talk through some of those highlights. So we'll kind of go through this. If you have questions, again, throw them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them as we can in here. So Rez will be answering your questions in the chat. If something makes sense to be answered live, I'll do that as well. But pleasure to meet everybody today. And Suleiman, I know you asked a question. What was 2 plus 2 to prove we're not recording this? I plugged it into ChatGPT, and the answer was horse. So ChatGPT again, 100% accurate. Uh, throw a little joke in there to start. As you actually look at Tufin, Secure Track is the primary visibility, audit, compliance portion of the suite. This is where you're going to see how many rules you have, how many devices you have in your infrastructure. In here, you're going to see, as Rez talked about, rules for audit, where you attest to the rules of who owns these rules. Are they expired? Do they need to be reevaluated by the business requester in there as well? You're going to see things like highly permissive rules, and it also has like rules with critical violations in here. So this is where you can actually layer security policy over it, but have kind of this executive level overview of what's happening in your infrastructure. So as we go through this, we're going to hit on a few things here that actually help to drive towards automation, things like this. So we have the rules for cleanup section. It's going to show you some basic things in here. The disabled rules, these are the rules that you've turned off that aren't going to be hit in the infrastructure. Unused rules at this high level are rules that have been in the infrastructure for over a year and have not been used in over a year. So that really, like, anything 365 and older is going to show up in the unused rules section. And then the fully shadowed rules. These are rules that are redundant within your infrastructure. So you might have rule 5 permitting access, and then rule 6 is permitting a subset of that, but rule 5 would grab all of that in there. So we'll look at a little bit of this. We're actually going to show like those trends over time as well, so you can actually justify to your boss, hey, we're actually doing these things or cleaning it up. Or you can take it to your boss and go, hey, we actually need to go and do some of these cleanup things because we're not doing the right things, and this problem is just continuing to grow for us. Some rules for optimization. These are looking at some of the best practices within your organization. So do I have comments attesting to what this rule is? Do I have logging so that I know who's using it? Is it being hit? Is it being used maliciously? Things that you can integrate with things like Cortex to be able to take action on those items. And then rules with no names associated, again, to help really denote, is this important? Is it being used? What's it for in here? As we look further into the compliance trends, you'll see a graph over time of these, and we'll actually jump into a little bit of how we build this here in a moment. And so you'll actually have the rules with violations of your compliance trends or of your compliance policies. We use something called a USP, or a unified security policy. And you can view this on a per device basis or a per USP basis. What a USP is, though, is it's a matrix of zones. You'll see you can have more than one. So you can have multiple USPs within your organization for different business units, applications, different locations, all those things. And as we look at the USP, the zones are groups of IP addresses and subnets of like business functions. So if you use a PCI app and you think you have a web layer and an app layer and a database layer, and those all have IP addresses associated with those layers, those would be zones that you would be able to consume. You may have a corporate zone, a user zone, things like this within there. And as you get into this matrix here, you'll actually have all of these cells and intersections, and you'll see a few different things are showing up. So I can actually say there should be no access between these zones. And this, again, is the high level policy. This is not the rules in production. This is what you're going to measure against. So you can say there should be no access. So this will identify all rules that do permit access between these two zones and flag them. I can permit all access, in which case we're never going to show violations between those two zones. Or we can build a customized list and build an allow list or a deny list of services and application IDs. So you'll see I have an allow list right now. We do support app IDs. So we can put in thing like, something like app dynamics or anything like this. So we can support app IDs. If you do happen to leverage something that doesn't support app ID, like, I don't know, maybe you have an old ASA or something like that, it'll actually translate this to the port and protocols for those pieces of your infrastructure that aren't as modern and don't support those next gen features like Palo Alto does. Additionally, if you build the block list, it's just services because the app IDs really at that point are just the supports and services. You can also put things in here like best practices. So put some guidelines around what these rules should look like as well. So explicit source, destination, and service are going to identify those rules where you have any. You can also flag it as a violation of your policy for a comment. So even if you don't have, we have that list of no comments as a best practice, this actually turns it into a violation of your policy. You can enforce logging, and you can enforce a shorter period of time for your last hit in there. So in the example of like the financial industry where they're doing twice a year rule reviews, this allows you to say, all right, every 180 days, if this isn't used, it's going to show up as a violation of my policy. You can also enforce rule granularity as well. So maximizing, or setting a max amount of source, destination, IPs, and services in here to really build this out to what you need. In here, you can also set the flows, how granular they are, and then the severities of them, add descriptions. Each one of these kind of goes into this. There are a couple of tools that we have to help build this. A lot of our customers actually leverage a tool like an Infoblox or a BlueCat or something from the IPAM world to actually identify subnets and hosts and what they're for. The IPAM security policy app allows us to use those REST APIs within those tools to pull that information in and consume it within Tufin so that you're not leveraging it or maintaining it in two places. We can leverage that information from the real source of truth for it. The other thing that we have is Security Policy Builder. And what this does is it allows you to build this matrix in Secure Track, and you could just basically set it and say deny everything. And what Security Policy Builder does is say, takes all these zones, compares it to some example firewalls in production, and it tells you what ports and protocols are actually in use for your rules. And from there, you can go and actually build a detailed policy based on what production really looks like, and then republish that back into Secure Track. And it allows you to really do this in the sandbox as opposed to trying to make it up as you go. You can actually leverage the real world for this. This then feeds back into all of those security policies, feed back into the dashboard. And so you'll see those trends over time in here as well. And you'll actually see the devices, the unified security policies, etc. So if I drill into the San Francisco device group in my Palo Alto, now I can actually get the rules and understand how they're being violated. So as I open this top rule up, you'll actually be able to see which device it's on. So in this case, we moved to a new panorama. You can see it's a San Fran pre-rule in here. There are no tags associated with it. We will pull the tags in as well. You'll see something called domain. Tufin allows you to break things into functional domains from a visibility and administrative access perspective. So you can break things out like this if you need to. If you have different business units, you're an MSP or something like that, you can do so. We'll show the sources, so you'll have all of the sources in here, the destinations, the lab devices. You'll get all of the services, the application IDs, rule categories, the source users, comments, all of those things, as well as all of the other things in here from the last hit perspective, etc. So we're actually going to track when these items were last hit. You'll also see this rule was modified 666 days ago. It's medium permissiveness. We do have the rule history tracking over time, but I'm going to drill back over to the violations page. And now within here, you can see here's my rule, and you can see on our PCI policy from DMZ to PCI web. So from my admin lab subnet group to the lab devices group, my standard was only allowed TFTP, and I'm allowing SSH shared, and I'm allowing HTTPS in there as well. So this is how I'm violating those policies. And we actually have a couple of things that we can do to allow you to take action on this. I can edit the rule documentation. I can add a technical owner to this, add a description to the rule in here. I can actually go through and add a related ticket. And now I can add a business owner email. I can set an expiration date for this rule for when I want to review it or clean it up or things like this. I can also take other actions. So the recertify rule is if I know that business owner and that team, recertify rule kicks off the workflow in our secure change portion of the suite that we'll get into in a moment. And it allows you to actually reach out to and send this back to the business owner and say, hey, Mr. Mrs. Requester, is this access still necessary in the environment? Do you still need it? Can we clean this up? It's never been hit. It's over, it's 2 years old, for example, and it's also got violations of our policy. If they say, yes, we can clean this up, we can actually then flip this over to decommission this rule. So decommission the rule allows us to disable it or to delete it. Typically, the workflow my clients follow is I'll disable this rule for 30 days or 60 days. And if nobody complains, then we move it and we automatically delete it from that point. And the final option we allow you to do through here is to modify this rule. So this will open up a workflow that allows you to edit the source, the destination, the services of this rule. So for example, I have SSH and HTTPS here as the services, but only TFTP is allowed. So what I could do is I could remove the SSH and HTTPS and flip it to TFTP to make this a compliant rule for how I'm actually sending data back and forth between these two zones. And the final action I can take is administrative as well, and this is creating exceptions to the rule, because no policy is complete without a way to actually track and manage exceptions for it. So if I do go ahead and create an exception, I can give it a name, I can add an approver to it, I can set an end date for it when the exception expires, and I can pick which security policy I want to exempt this from. So in this case, it was PCI. I can actually add in the zones as well in this in here as well, as if I want to, and add descriptions. So I can get really granular on that exception kind of based process. So as I go back here, there's also a lot of other things that I can search for. So this is a link you can also track, and this is the what can I do on this page within Tufin. Our knowledge base is public. If you want to just Google Tufin knowledge base and pull it open, you'll have access to all this information. We don't hide it behind a login, a paywall, anything like this. We don't even, you don't even have to sign up for a demo to be able to view this information, which is nice. But I can get in here, brings me right to the rule viewer that I was looking at from that page. I can open up my query fields, and now as I scroll down this list, I have access to view all of the different things that I can search on. So that's kind of one piece. There's a lot of reporting and things as well. I'm not going to dive into the details of that today, but I'm going to show you one of the things that we find that our customers find very valuable. And this is the topology map. And what this does is it allows you to understand end to end, how does traffic flow through my network. So you saw earlier, I had the San Fran device group here. I have a cluster from Palo Alto. I can actually view the routes in this device, IPv4 and v6 routing information. I can view the interfaces on this device, including the virtual routers as well. I can see any route-based VPN. So if I pull this up, you'll see I have a VPN. In this case, it's going to AWS. But where the true power comes in is now this is actually searchable. So I'm going to actually pull up a path across my infrastructure. And as I look from source to destination, now I have a graphical view of this information, and I can actually see my routes, interfaces, etc. But I can also get the matching rules and see what would be permitted, what would be denied. So as I step through, I have this graphical understanding. I can see where I have MPLS networks, things like this. Even if I have access lists on my routing and switching infrastructure, I can see those access lists as well. And then when I get into the Palo Alto world, I can see I have a couple of ASAs in this path. One has the policy, one doesn't. So that's a problem. And then if I get here to the Palo Alto at the end, I can actually see all of the rules that are permitting all of this access from an HTTPS basis. And at the end, finishing with my interzone default rule. This is great because it allows you to very quickly determine if the access exists. There's a couple of things that you can do. It's also available via our REST API, so you could plug this into like a BMC Helix or a ServiceNow, and actually have somebody makes a request, actually check and see if the access is already open. But one of the other cool things that we've done is we've created a Teams integration. So we've used an LLM chatbot that's privately in this server. It's not using your customer data to train it or anything like this. It's private. We've trained it with private data to be able to answer the questions. And what it allows you to do is take those same things that I was doing right there, but ask it in a human nature, right? So can this IP talk to this IP on FTP? And it'll actually come through and tell you traffic on at least one path is blocked. So I have the sources, the destinations. I can see the devices that were blocking that traffic. I can also have it generate me a PDF. And in this example, I've created that PDF. And as I open this up, I now have that same view of the PDF. I can see that same path that I was just looking at, see all of the details on all of the traffic that was permitted, that was denied, which interfaces it's going in and out of, the matching rules, all of those things in there as well. So I can get really granular view of this and share this. The beauty of this is this person, if you're using the chatbot, you don't have to have access to Tufin. So your network administrators, firewall admins, and engineering teams may have access to Tufin, but you can provide the teams access to your help desk, your SOC, your NOC, or even application teams that maybe hit you with the drive-bys on a regular basis with, hey, sorry to interrupt your day, but can these things talk? And now they can just ask this tool in Teams. They would have asked you in Teams anyway, so the data is already there, what they're asking for. And this will actually make the API calls, give them the information that they need right up front. And we're actually expanding this to do things like open tickets for administrators, to actually extend approving tickets and firewall changes into here via Teams, so you'll see the information and make those decisions quickly without having to jump between different systems within there. So a couple of things that this then drives is the unified security policy and the topology map actually drive automation. So we're going to jump over to secure change, and this is where we get into the workflows and automation portion of what Tufin does. And so from a workflow perspective, there are several different workflows that you can create. You can create multiple versions of the same workflow. But in this case, we actually have the access request. This is typically 80 to 90% of the day-to-day activity that our users run into. And this is somebody saying, I need source A to destination B opened up. We can get into clone network object. This is great. I have a state government that we worked with that they had a domain controller fail, and it was the only domain controller they had for their state patrol. What they did is they spun up a backup on a VM. They had an old Dell server that failed. It allowed us to say server A is gone. I need server B to match its access everywhere. And they were doing it manually. We walked through this workflow with them, created it, and 10 minutes later, they had all the firewall rules recreated. I think there were like 85 rules that had to be modified. They were going to do it manually. It would have taken them hours or days to clean everything up. Decommission network object is the opposite of this. It allows you to take, and we actually built this for them as well, that domain controller that had died, we put it in as the decommission object, and the 70 some rules that it had, it went and removed that as the source and destination from there. So this one is a big time saver if you have those kind of requests that come in to decommission servers or to clone objects, like, hey, a new web server got stood up, a new domain controller got stood up, and I need to mimic the access of something that already exists. Modify group is a great one for implementation in a couple of areas. I use the domain controller example. They add one, you add it to the group. You're using a shared group in Panorama. It allows you to push it out to that very easily and have that access all updated quickly. The other option is actually using Cortex. So let's say you detect something with Cortex and you want to block access to something. What you can do is have a couple of rules staged with a group available for this, and Cortex can use Tufin as the orchestration piece to go and say, hey, I want to block this access everywhere it exists. The beauty of this is we can also push this to other areas too, not just that Panorama is managing, but other vendors. Maybe you guys bought another company or something like that, and you need to do so. This allows you to quickly orchestrate, automate that change, tie it into the change process very quickly within there as well. And then the last few I already hit on. Rule decommission, very straightforward. Disable or delete a rule. Rule modification, edit source, destination, or service. And the rule recertification, again, is an administrative workflow to ask if this access is still necessary and have those end users certify or decertify that a rule is still relevant. I'm going to jump into kind of the fully automated access request workflow in here and walk through this a little bit, and you can see how the different pieces that we covered in Secure Track actually help build this. So when the user comes in, a lot of times this is actually front-ended through an ITSM tool like a Remedy or BMC Helix or through ServiceNow, and they'll put the request in there. They'll get the source, destination, service, actions. We can add a lot more fields in here, different text fields, text areas, checkboxes, hyperlinks, project IDs, all of these different things that you would think you would want to add in here, we can add, and they become available via the REST API. So it's really easy to integrate and tie these things together. So let's say it gets submitted in ServiceNow. The business approval is typically something that would happen right after it's submitted in the RITM. And in that case, we're not going to use it in Tufin, so I'm going to actually deactivate this step so you can see how easy it is to modify and manage these workflows. Once we're through this, we actually get into some of the automation. So now that we have the request suggest target, this is going to come through. It's going to run that same topology path request that you saw me run earlier. So in this case, it's not looking for the ports and protocols, but what it's doing is looking for all of those devices in the path. We do have the option here. If I come back to step 1 and the fields, I can actually go through and we can actually, is it in here? It is not, it's in here. We can actually auto close this ticket if the access already exists. So let's say I go to step 1, we're going to check and say from A to B on these ports, is this access all open? We'll actually auto close that ticket for you in here as well. So if let's say we don't auto close it, you actually need to open the access. Now we're going to build the list of targets. So you'll have that blast radius based on topology. We're going to compare those source and destination IP addresses and the services so that you can run the risk analysis against the unified security policy and see, do I deviate from my policy? We can also pull in, as Erez mentioned, vulnerability scan information to tell you, am I going to make something exploitable within the infrastructure as well? And then once we have this information, we actually present this to the security team or to a team that's going to review this information. So as we get over to this step, and I look at the fields, I'm going to have a little button on the left, RSK. It's going to be red or green. It's going to be green if there are no violations and no vulnerabilities associated with this change. Otherwise, it's going to be red, and they'll be able to actually see the details of this as well. And we'll actually jump into a workflow from here. So let's say they approve this, they go through, they approve the change. They may do this in Helix, and we publish the information back up there, whatnot, and they just approve it there and have, make an API call to Tufin, move it forward. Once this is moved forward, we can actually do the technical design in here. So automatically, we're going to design the change. We're going to tell you what needs to change, where it needs to change, and what that change should look like to match what the request was, including where it should be in the rule base. If there are rules that we can reuse and add a source or a destination or a service to, we look at that information to minimize the amount of rules. Alternatively, as opposed to just pushing the change to production, we can also assign it to a handler first. And what this allows you to do now is to have that design done, have somebody on the network team or security team, whoever's approving the technical design, to approve those changes in there. We can also insert extra steps in here. So if I need a CAB approval, if I want to break technical design and implementation into 2 steps, it's very easy to do. And so it allows me to go through, and now I've created step 6 and step 7 in here. And now I can break these apart. I could take step 7 and I could actually turn this into update policy and device. So now I do the design and the review with the handler. The next step, I go through, I update the policy device, I push this to Panorama, and I can even commit the change. So update pushes this to Panorama, commit pushes it from Panorama to the end firewalls so that it'll actually be out and in production at that point. The last step that we have here is an auto verification step. This takes the request that started and it compares it to what we actually have in secure track after the changes are deployed. And if those match and the access is now permitted, we can actually go ahead and verify and validate that ticket and close it out. We can put conditional steps in here, things like that. So let's say verification fails. We can have a step 9 in here very easily that says, all right, verification failed. We can rerun the designer, redeploy, things like this to resolve those issues. As we get back here into the tickets, and I'm looking at the access requests, so you'll actually see GCP to Palo on-prem. I'm actually going to pull this up. And what we'll actually see in here is they come in at step 1. You're going to see just the sources, the destinations, the services that are in here. It's going to go through. It got approved. It got approved by Henry Carr. We do have a full audit history in here of it. You'll see I went through, I built the target list and the device groups and the risk associated. I've actually gone through and now approved the risk and auto-approved it. And now I'm actually in the design section. So in this case, the risk is showing green. So there's no risks associated with either one of the access requests, which is good. That's what we expect. I also have the design done. And now I can actually drill into this and understand based on this, here's what I have. I need to add a new subnet for the rule, add rule new 41 as the last pre-rule. I can actually get in and view this policy in here. And now you can actually see it's a universal rule from Meraki to R&D on this source subnet. So these are the zones, the source subnet, users if you need to. The application ID is any, but we're using these services. We can do also URL categories or app IDs or all three of the above here. And then you'll actually see the security profile group. If there's rule tags and comments, all of that gets added into the rule. And if we view the policy, you can actually see where this is going to get deployed. So as I go through and look at this information, I can see all of the different pre-rules. And you'll see right here, it's going to get inserted as the last pre-rule right below this one and right above my inner zone default. So I have all of this information. This is editable as well. So I can go and edit the comment. Ricky was here. There were two of us. And now I've got a new comment in here as well. And, the other Ricky doesn't get to present today, but, there were two of us, so I'm proud of that. So as you go through and have these designs, these changes, et cetera, that pieces of information do show up in there. And then we do have the next step in here, which we're not at, is the design commit. This is actually going to push it out into production and actually have it go live. And the last step, of course, is that automated verification. So can I kind of pause, take a breath here for a moment because I've been talking for a little bit, and see. It looked like we had a couple of questions about agents. I'll actually answer that one live as well. So when it comes to mapping everything out, we have the we like to do it in the native connectivity style, so that in that topology map, as we're pulling these devices in, like the firewalls with the Palo Alto firewalls, we're going to integrate with the API and Panorama and pull everything in that way, so that we're not actually reaching out to every single device. So it's a single point that really allows it to pull that in a streamlined manner. The routing and switching, we may have to SSH to those devices and pull that information in, but we try to do it that way. In the cloud environments, it's really just the native API calls to those environments to pull that information in. So there's no sidecars to be installed or any overhead that you have to worry about from that perspective. Unless you're like a large ISP, generally we're just pulling the route tables, and getting like a show route off of those devices isn't going to be a factor to be able to build these topology maps. So we do support all of the things like virtual routers, VRFs, VPN tunnels. We can even do put the firewalls, like if you have them in vWire mode where they're layer 2 and they're basically acting as transparent on the wire. We can support things like that as well. All right. Erez or Tim, was there anything that I missed or that we wanted to cover as well? I know it's or Charles too, if there's questions that you had or things that we should dive into a little bit more.
No, there was one last question that somebody did ask us. Is there a way to have a final approval of the commit of the changes to the firewall? Erez said you can customize it however your goals are. You can customize it however your goals are. Got it. I didn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
There. Yes.
Yeah. And so, kind of, I'm going to go back to that workflow and show you an example of it. So, when I go back to this fully automated change request, I have this security review and approval. I'm going to use this as the kind of the example step, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this further down the line here after the technical design. I'm going to duplicate my technical design step and move that after the review. And so we'll call this now, kind of breaking this up, I'm going to call this just technical design. And we're going to run the designer. We're going to change this and call this a design review. And now I have that. And then now we're going to actually call this deploy to Panorama. And we're going to actually have that do the update policy device. And so this design review, what you could do is this could be a cab, things like this. But this is kind of to show how easy it is to break these steps up and create the workflow that matches the way that you do it. I have clients that do this in 6 steps, and I have one client that has more approvals than they have actual work, and they have 30 steps in a workflow. So we can adapt and adopt whatever really does make the most sense to your organization, because it can get crazy. So, and hopefully that answered your question, Abdul Malik.
Looks like there's one other question.
Yeah, Sharon was just asking, does it overwhelm the Panorama's management interface if we have all syslog, device telemetry, logging, management, and all the other services on a single management interface?
The answer is it depends. So there is the capability to expand Panorama out and have, like, servers that are just focused on logging, and in high volume environments, that's actually the recommended approach, right? So I would say that we have to kind of take it on a case by case basis. In like a smaller, medium environment, typically it's not a problem. But when we get into larger environments, yes. And we've actually had to rewrite our device collector for Panorama because of that in some cases, because we're grabbing so much information. So there is a little bit of throttling built into the suite to ensure that we're not overwhelming that interface and trying to pull too much information at once. And part of that is we actually ingest syslog from Panorama or from the firewalls directly, so it can replicate that traffic, or from a SIM platform. Like if you use Cortex and you have the Cortex deployment, you can have it forward us the syslogs as opposed to having Panorama forward us the syslogs as well. So there's ways to handle that, to lighten the load on what Panorama is going through.
Charles, I just put in the chat the URL for the raffle.
Yep.
And for folks who want to participate in the raffle, we're going to draw it at 5 p.m. today Eastern time. So you've got about a few hours to get in, and we just make sure you use a business email to qualify, and good luck. And Charles, I guess you're eligible too, because you're not an employee of Tufin.
It's not like I don't have an interest in Lego already.
I see that.
I got a 2-foot Hulkbuster Lego set back here. So yeah, Lego is definitely my thing as well. So yeah, so thank you. I appreciate the offer there. Yeah. So everyone, we're going to be wrapping up here. So if anyone does have any last minute questions, now's the time to get them in while we kind of chit chat here. So throw your questions into the chat if you have anything more. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say thank you to the audience for being here, and we look forward to any follow-up that you might want to have with us. Feel free to reach out to tufin.com, or if you want to reach out to me, it's really easy, tim.shea, S-H-E-A, @tufin.com.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Greg, you made a comment, it's just a start. Yeah, no, believe me, I'm well down the Lego path. I've got actually several hundred sets. So yeah. When it comes to things, I'm like, yay, Lego is a good problem to have. Expensive problem, but a good problem to have.
We all pick our vices.
Exactly.
Legos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ricky, Erez, Tim, gentlemen, thank you very much. Again, agreed, Robert, Lego all day, and Colby, love the Lego. Yep. If there are no other questions, I'll go ahead and let you guys go. Thank you very much for the presentation today for our first FTA. I think this went fantastic. We had great attendance. We had really good questions come through. We'll be doing this again probably in a month or two. At the moment, I'm currently planning the FTA events to be every other month. But if we get enough interest from enough vendors, we'll do them more frequently. So
yeah, we look forward to the opportunity to come back, Charles.
And we definitely will have you back, no question. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.